In this episode, we move into one of the most useful ways to think like a defender, which is learning that not every attacker is the same and not every intrusion attempt comes from the same kind of person or group. New learners sometimes picture cyber threats as a single mass of bad actors doing roughly the same thing for roughly the same reasons. But that view is too simple to help an analyst make good decisions. Threat actor categories and profiles give security teams a way to organize what they know about who may be behind malicious activity, what those actors usually want, how patient they tend to be, and what kinds of targets they prefer. That knowledge helps make alerts more meaningful because suspicious behavior looks different when it comes from a careless opportunist than when it resembles the work of a disciplined, well-funded group. When you understand the broad categories of threat actors and the traits that usually define them, you become better at recognizing patterns, assigning priority, and seeing why context matters so much in cybersecurity. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A threat actor is any individual or group that carries out malicious or potentially harmful actions against systems, networks, data, or people. That sounds broad because it is broad, and it needs to be, since the cybersecurity world includes everything from a curious teenager using public tools to a professional criminal organization running large-scale campaigns for profit. The category tells you the general kind of actor you may be dealing with, while the profile describes the characteristics that help explain how that actor behaves in practice. A profile may include motivation, skill level, access to resources, preferred targets, tolerance for risk, typical methods, and the amount of time the actor is willing to spend pursuing a goal. None of that creates certainty, because defenders rarely know the full identity of an attacker right away, but it does support better analysis. Instead of treating all malicious activity as a mystery with no structure, analysts use categories and profiles to turn scattered indicators into a more useful picture of likely intent and probable behavior. One of the clearest ways to separate threat actors is by motivation, because motives often shape everything else about an intrusion. Some actors want money, some want disruption, some want intelligence, some want influence, and some simply want status, revenge, or ideological satisfaction. A financially motivated actor may focus on ransomware, fraud, theft of payment data, or schemes that can be monetized quickly, while an actor driven by espionage may care less about speed and more about long-term access to sensitive information. An ideologically motivated attacker may target symbolic organizations, public-facing systems, or institutions tied to a political or social cause. Someone motivated by personal grievance may act in a way that reflects anger rather than patience or strategic planning. When analysts think about threat actor profiles, motivation is often one of the first useful clues because it helps explain why a target was chosen and why a particular method may have been used. Understanding motive does not solve attribution by itself, but it makes the observed behavior more understandable and less random. Skill level is another major factor. Although beginners should be careful not to assume that every successful attacker is highly sophisticated. Some threat actors have deep technical ability and can develop custom malware, discover weaknesses, or adapt rapidly when defenses change. Others are far less advanced and simply reuse public tools, buy access from others, or follow online instructions with limited understanding of how the tools actually work. Even so, less skilled actors can still cause serious damage if they encounter poorly protected systems, untrained users, or an organization that responds slowly. This is why defenders distinguish between actor capability and actor impact. A low-skill actor may still achieve high impact under the right conditions, while a highly capable actor may remain invisible for a long time because their goal is quiet access rather than obvious disruption. Profiles become more accurate when analysts look at both the sophistication of the activity and the operational style behind it rather than relying only on whether the attack seems technically advanced. Resources and organization also help define threat actor profiles, because different actors operate with very different levels of funding, infrastructure, planning, and support. A lone individual working from a home computer has a very different profile from a coordinated criminal enterprise with developers, negotiators, access brokers, and money laundering support. An actor with large resources can sustain longer campaigns, rent or build infrastructure across many regions, test tools before using them, and replace blocked systems more easily than a small actor with limited means. Greater organization often shows up in the consistency of their operations, the quality of their social engineering, the speed with which they adapt, and the discipline they use to avoid detection. Analysts who pay attention to these signs can often make better inferences about the category of actor involved. A random scan against public services may suggest opportunistic behavior, while a carefully timed intrusion using multiple stages, carefully selected targets, and quiet persistence may point toward a more organized and capable actor profile. One familiar category is the cybercriminal, and for many organizations this is one of the most common threats they face. Cybercriminals are usually motivated by money, which makes their behavior relatively easy to understand even when their exact identity remains unknown. They may steal credentials, deploy ransomware, conduct phishing campaigns, sell access, run fraud operations, or harvest data that can later be sold or exploited. Some work alone or in small groups, but many operate within a broader criminal ecosystem where different specialists handle access, malware delivery, payment collection, or stolen data markets. Their profiles often reflect pragmatism more than ideology, meaning they tend to pursue targets that offer the best return for the least effort or risk. That is why broad phishing campaigns and attacks against exposed services are so common. From a defender's perspective, understanding the cybercriminal profile helps explain why routine weaknesses such as poor password practices, unpatched systems, and untrained users remain such attractive entry points for financially motivated attackers. Another important category is the nation-state actor or the actor working on behalf of a government. These groups are often associated with espionage, strategic intelligence collection, influence operations, long-term access, or disruption tied to national goals rather than quick financial gain. Their profiles may include patience, operational discipline, better funding, access to specialized talent, and a willingness to invest time in carefully chosen targets such as government agencies, defense contractors, research institutions, energy providers, or major enterprises with valuable intellectual property. Not every suspected nation-state intrusion looks spectacular or technically exotic. In many cases, the defining traits are stealth, persistence, careful selection of victims, and behavior that aligns with long-term intelligence objectives. Analysts often pay attention to the broader pattern rather than only individual tools, because the tools can change. What matters more is the repeated combination of target type, collection behavior, timing, and disciplined tradecraft. Even at a beginner level, it is important to understand that these actors often play a longer game than ordinary criminals do. Hacktivists represent another category, and their motivations are usually tied to ideology, politics, social causes, or a desire to embarrass or pressure a target publicly. Their actions may include website defacement, data leaks, denial of service activity, account compromise, or publicity-focused operations designed to attract attention rather than remain hidden. The hacktivist profile often includes symbolic target selection, meaning the victim matters not only for its data or money but for what it represents in a larger public argument. These actors may vary widely in skill and organization. Some are loose communities that form around a cause and act inconsistently, while others are more coordinated and persistent than their public image suggests. Analysts reviewing this kind of threat activity often consider messaging, timing, public statements, and the symbolic importance of the target to understand the actor profile. While hacktivists are not always the most technically advanced category, they can still create serious business impact by disrupting services, exposing sensitive information, and driving reputational harm through public attention. The insider is a separate category that deserves careful attention because insider activity comes from someone who already has some form of legitimate access, trust, or familiarity with the environment. That person may be an employee, contractor, partner, or other authorized user, and the motivation can range from financial gain to resentment, coercion, carelessness, or divided loyalty. This category is especially challenging because insider behavior may initially look like normal business activity. An insider profile often focuses on access level, job function, emotional or financial pressure, recent behavioral changes, and whether the actions fit the user's normal role and timing. Not every insider incident involves deliberate malice. Some insiders are negligent rather than hostile, which means the risk can come from poor decisions, unsafe habits, or failure to follow policy. Even so, a malicious insider can be highly damaging because they already understand internal processes and may know where valuable data lives. That combination of access and familiarity makes insider profiles especially important for defenders. Related to the insider, but still distinct, is the supply chain threat actor or any attacker who uses trusted third parties, service providers, software dependencies, or business relationships as a path into the real target. This profile matters because attackers often prefer the weakest link, and a smaller vendor or trusted partner may be easier to compromise than a heavily defended primary organization. A supply chain-related actor may target software updates, managed service providers, hardware components, cloud relationships, or shared credentials and integrations that allow indirect access. What makes this profile especially dangerous is the element of inherited trust. Organizations may lower their guard when traffic, software, or access appears to come from a familiar and approved source. Analysts therefore need to think beyond the obvious boundary of their own company and consider how trust relationships can be exploited. A supply chain-focused profile often includes patience, reconnaissance, and a preference for high-leverage access points where one compromise can create downstream access to many victims at once. Some actors fall into what people casually call the script kiddie category. Although the term can sound dismissive and should be used carefully, it generally refers to inexperienced individuals who rely heavily on ready-made tools, copied techniques, and publicly available exploit code rather than deep original knowledge. Their motives can include curiosity, attention-seeking, boredom, personal challenge, or simple mischief. From a defensive standpoint, the main lesson is not to laugh them off. These actors may still scan aggressively, exploit easy weaknesses, and disrupt systems that lack basic protections. Their profiles often include noisy behavior, poor operational security, limited patience, and attacks that are broad rather than precisely targeted. Analysts may detect them more easily because the activity is less disciplined, but the volume of attempts can still create operational burden. Understanding this category helps beginners remember that not every threat is elite. Yet even unsophisticated actors can trigger incidents when organizations leave common doors wide open. Threat actor profiling also depends heavily on target selection and behavior patterns, not just on the labels attached to different categories. Analysts often examine who is being targeted, what data is being touched when the activity occurs, how the attacker moves after gaining access, and whether the actor is trying to stay hidden or make a public statement. These recurring behaviors are often described through tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPS, which helps security teams recognize patterns across incidents even when exact tools change. A financially motivated criminal may reuse efficient phishing methods and monetization-focused follow-on actions, while an espionage-focused actor may use careful credential theft and quiet data collection over a longer period. Profiles become more useful when they connect category, motivation, capability, and observed TTPS into one coherent picture. This is why analysts are trained not to jump too quickly from a single alert to a grand conclusion. Good profiling is built from patterns, context, and consistency over time. There is also an important caution here, because profiling is helpful only when it remains disciplined and evidence-based. It is easy to overstate confidence, assume too much from limited data, or force an incident into a category that seems familiar even when the facts are incomplete. Attribution in cybersecurity is difficult, and defenders must often operate with probabilities rather than absolute certainty. That means profiles should guide analysis, not replace it. If an analyst sees traits that resemble a known actor category, that can shape triage, hypothesis building, and defensive action, but it should not become an excuse for careless assumptions. The organization still needs to contain risk, investigate thoroughly, and validate what actually happened. From an exam perspective, The practical value of profiling lies in improving detection and response, not in pretending that defenders can always identify the exact people behind an event. Strong analysts stay humble about what they know and use profiles as structured aids rather than as shortcuts to certainty. For someone preparing for CySA+, the biggest takeaway is that threat actor categories and profiles help make security operations more intelligent. They help explain why one event deserves urgent escalation while another may reflect a lower-level opportunistic probe. They support better risk conversations because leadership understands threats more clearly when the activity is tied to recognizable motives, capabilities, and target patterns. They also improve hunting, detection logic, incident response, and defensive planning by pushing analysts to ask better questions about who would want access, why the organization is attractive, and how different actors usually operate. Instead of seeing threat data as disconnected technical noise, the analyst learns to connect behavior to human intent and organizational context. That shift is one of the most important parts of growing from basic alert handling into true security analysis, because cybersecurity is not just about systems under attack. It is also about people, groups, motives, and patterns of behavior. By the end of this discussion, threat actor categories and profiles should feel less like abstract intelligence language and more like a practical framework for understanding adversaries in a useful, beginner-friendly way. Different actors bring different motives, capabilities, resources, risk tolerance, and targeting choices, and those differences shape how defenders investigate, prioritize, and respond. Cybercriminals, nation-state actors, hacktivists, insiders, supply chain-related actors, and less sophisticated opportunists all create risk, but they do not do it in the same way or for the same reasons. The more clearly you understand those distinctions, the better you can interpret suspicious activity and the less likely you are to treat every event as identical. For CySA+, that means learning to think beyond the alert itself and seeing the likely human story behind it. Once you begin analyzing threats through that lens, you are no longer just reacting to technical events. You are building the mindset of a real defender who understands that adversaries have patterns, and patterns can be studied.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.